Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce Jim Piddock to the show. He has a book, a tell-all Hollywood memoir, Caught with My Pants Down. Writer and actor Jim Piddock. How are we doing today, Jim?
I'm great, thank you. Great.
Great, Jim. Well, I was excited to speak to you after reading the book this morning. Congratulations on the book. It's a laugh riot. I zipped through it. And I was actually really encouraged to know that we both share a Bret Easton Ellis story, and we both share a poo on the train story, very eloquently depicted in the book. But maybe you can just give us a little backstory into you and how it all began, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had a career now in Hollywood and on Broadway as an actor and a writer for 45 years. And I did a talk for the Screen Actors Guild in 2017 called Let's Talk About It Inside the Industry. So I was essentially just interviewed by a Wall Street Journal reporter, and we're supposed to do 45 minutes. And I was kind of busy at the time. I didn't really prepare anything. So I went there and I just told these anecdotes and stories of stuff that had happened to me and things that I found amusing or embarrassing or whatever. And with some sort of lessons to be derived from them. So the people there were either people who were interested in being actors, who were actors, or who were, just interested in show business. So I really enjoyed it. And we ended up doing about an hour and a half with Q&A and stuff. And I came away thinking I could do this as a one-man show. I haven't done theater for years. This would be fun. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have to really learn lines because I can just tell these stories. And then I started writing and it became a 10-hour play very quickly. So I then realized that would be testing any theater-going audience's patience. So I thought I'll write a book. And what would have taken me 5 years took me 5 months, because right around then we hit this pandemic thing. And so I had some time on my hands. I kind of, it was odd for me because I don't normally look backwards. I look forwards or right in front of me. So it was just interesting to take stock and look and find out what it had all been about. And I really did write it with the intention of it being accessible for everyone. Yeah. I was very conscious of that. And if there isn't a good story or an anecdote in any chapter, the chapter went, who's interested in, then I did this film and then I did that TV show and then I did that play. It's not interesting. It's not interesting to me. So I have worked with pretty much everybody and anybody in the business. And so I could do some shameless name dropping, which I do. I could eviscerate a few people who deserve to be eviscerated, and I could praise a lot of people who I think deserve praise. And some I could rehabilitate their images because they have bad reputations, but in my experience, I thought they were great. So it's very gossipy. It's totally irreverent. It doesn't take itself or myself seriously. So that's really why I did it. And thankfully, so far, seems to be hitting a chord with both people who are interested in show business and people who have no interest, and find it relatable through the various philosophies and sort of observations I make about life and the stories about that, as opposed to just, films and TV and theater, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think you put it together very nicely there. It's self-effacing in moments. It's not too laudatory on certain people because you do have opinions on other people that you want to express. And I thought it was a nice compost of all of those things. But at the same time, like you say, it wasn't, you never went too serious and too deep at the same time where you felt like I'm getting entrenched in something that I didn't really want to be a part of. It really just zips through. It's a great
well, I admire you for reading it so fast. I mean, I can read pretty fast, but 300 pages or 80,000 words, you must be a brilliant speed reader, because I could probably do it. Most people, it would take about 6 hours to read the book. So that's really reading fast. I mean, the audio book, I think, is almost 8 hours, and I narrated that. So, but that's talking aloud is probably a little slower than reading. But it's the average length of an average memoir.
I wonder if it's something that, because it's of interest to me, if it's something that I speed read and it's like algebra, I'm like, it's just going to be.
And they are short chapters, so you can zip through. And I mean, my screenwriting experience led me to, I think, be able to keep things moving pretty fast.
And it all acting started for you with a farting incident in school, which I quite liked. I was wondering if you could regale that one.
Yes. Interesting question. I thought this was a show about costumes and wardrobe, so I'm loving that you're talking about farting. it was, you know, it was the moment I opened the book with. The moment I knew that I could be a professional actor was at drama school, when on my first day I'd eaten an enormous Chinese meal for lunch, and came back and saw that the following class was movement class, and that wasn't the kind of movement I wanted at that point. And here we go into costumes. We had to wear, and I was so self-conscious. I was 22 years old, 21, I think. And we had to wear black tights and black roll neck sweaters, the men, and the women wore black leotards for this movement class. And everyone's trying to impress each other on the first day. And I was really, really self-conscious and had zero confidence in my ability to do a headstand. I mean, I'm quite athletic, but that's not what I do. And so people were going along, and the teacher was a slightly camp American man, and there was a mat out there. And he said, okay, class, you're going to come up, you go into your headstand, two students will hold your feet, and then I will tell you to release and go, and off you go. And so a few people did it really rather well, in my opinion. And then I came up, and I still have managed a headstand of kinds. It wasn't terrible. So far, so good. And then I heard him say, and release. And the two students holding my legs let go of me, and I came down on the mat. And as I hit the mat, I let out the loudest, hardest, sharpest fart you've ever heard in your life. I mean, it was like a gun going off, a starting pistol. And I lay there absolutely mortified, just thinking, well, maybe I could be a lawyer, maybe I could be an accountant. There's got to be something else I can do. And my eyes were closed. And it was that sort of 3 or 4 seconds when, if you have children, you know, when a child falls over, there's that kind of, just that 3 or 4 seconds where there's a beat before they start screaming and crying. You know it's coming. And I was waiting for the explosion of laughter and derision, and it didn't come. I waited and waited, and it didn't come. And I opened one eye very cautiously and looked up. And then I saw the whole class gathered around the mat, looking down at me as if they were peering into an open grave. And I was confused, completely confused. And then I heard the teacher say, oh my God, what was that? And I, without a beat, said, it's an old football injury. It's my ankle. It sometimes goes out. And everyone was like, oh, help him up, help him up. And these two very lovely actresses helped me up, and I fake hobbled my way to the edge of the studio and sat the whole of the rest of the class out. And as I watched everybody else doing this, I just thought to myself, I could leave now. I've actually qualified to be an actor. I don't need this. It was a postgraduate course after university. I don't need to do this course for a year. I've got it. And of course, I did need some techniques and stuff that they taught me. But and then, I mean, the postscript was, I don't know what language I can use on this show, but the postscript was in the dressing room. You can always bleep it out. In the dressing room afterwards, people were saying, you know, how are you? And I said, well, it's I get a bit better, actually. You know, it's not bad. I mean, normally it takes a few hours or a day or so, but to be honest, it feels okay now. And they're, oh, great. So they all went off, and then one guy hung back, and he happened to be an American student, oddly as well. And he said, Jim, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, sure. He said, and then he said, rather as a statement more than a question, he said, you farted, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I did. And he went, fucking A, man, and high-fived me. And my reputation after that at drama school was A, as a comedian, but B, as a flatulent person, and C, that I was okay.
Well, this guy's tuned in. I mean, he also kept it to himself by the sound of it. He waited.
Which is more than I did. Which is more than I did. Yeah, no, he did. He did. Well, then I think he told everybody, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's brilliant." You know?
I love the description of the sharp fart and the starting pistol, because I got a friend who every time he farts, and I was in a band with him, so we're in a lot of closed environments in a van touring up and down the country. So every time he cracked wind, he would always come out with a different analogy for his fart and how it sounded. And I always think that's probably just the most creative thing you can do, is instantly come up with how to identify the sound of a fart and make it relatable.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a lesson in how to be an improviser, which I later obviously had to do in the Christopher Guest movies quite a lot. But anyway, yeah.
So, Jim, thanks for entertaining me with that one, or indulging me. But I mean, this is a show about style and costumes primarily.
Oh yeah.
I
Wow.
was going to ask you. I mean, people might know you from films like Independence Day. You said Best in Show, or Prestige, one of my
Yeah.
definitely my favorite Nolan film. Were there any costumes that you may have kept hold of over the years throughout the filming? Is there some stuff that you can hang
Oh
on?
yeah, absolutely. I've got certain things, and in the old days, the studios would let you buy the wardrobe, or they'd give it to you, you know. And then they got all weird about it, and they keep them in warehouses, and they never get used again, or they occasionally do. But yeah, no, I definitely did. It was one thing where I ended up, you know, being given, I think, 16, 17 shirts, and they were lovely, and
Wow.
some trousers and stuff. So yeah, I mean, if it's stuff I like and I would wear in real life, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a bit, I'm not grumpy in wardrobe fittings, but I don't like them. I don't like them. And so if there's a wardrobe department that makes me feel comfortable, I'm delighted and we have a really good time. But if there's someone who's a bit sort of, you know, wardrobe Nazi and a bit bossy and sort of, I don't react very well. I don't like buying clothes, to be honest with you. I don't know. I get hot and bothered and I'm taking things on and off. So if a wardrobe department can make me feel comfortable, I adore them. And on the Christopher Guest films, it's great because you have so much input. You're creating your character. You know, I've written with Chris, and we write outlines that are very detailed about the people, and we write the scenes, and the structure of the movie is completely, every scene is mapped out. But the dialogue, you know, you're allowed to improvise, and you're allowed to choose a lot of what you look like and how you look. So that means your hair, facial hair, anything you do that you know you can do, and so the wardrobe is very creative, and I love that because, and I kind of get a bit spoiled when I go to do things where the director wants to make the choice, as opposed to, you know, with Chris Guest, he just approves it once you made the choice and that's it. Yeah, that makes sense, or that's probably too much. But some directors are very kind of dictatorial, and that's tough for me because I love being part of that creative process. I mean, in Best in Show, it was easy. It was just tux, so there was nothing to worry about there. But a Mighty Wind, I got, you know, I had some lovely ideas. I wanted this to be kind of a nerdy guy who wore rather too short jogging shorts in his spare time around the house. And those ones you remember from the 70s that were just sort of, they were so high, they were ridiculous. They basically barely covered the meat and two veg. So I wore these in a couple of scenes. And I had one scene where I thought I was cracking open walnuts, and Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara were trying to rehearse something musically. And I was cracking these walnuts tactlessly and reading a book, oblivious. And it would keep interrupting them. But then I thought I would add a bit of business, where I would drop some of the nutshells into these shorts and then try and fish the shells out. And I never got through we never got through the scene. We never shot it properly because I couldn't stop laughing. It's the only time I've ever cracked myself up because it was so shameless and disgusting. And Chris and Eugene couldn't watch me. They couldn't look at me. Every time they'd turn, they'd just go. So I'm not sure we ever did it. And I think Chris in the end had the good, and even if we did get it, we might have. He had the good sense and the good taste to cut it. It was appalling. But there was I like costumes sort of being as a part of the character. And in Mascots, which I wrote with Chris, which is all about a world sports mascots competition, the wardrobe department we knew from day one that was going to be the key part of this show, this movie, that they had to come up with some extraordinary, you know, costumes for these mascots. And we created some bizarre mascots, you know, some really odd ones. And they came up with some brilliant stuff. And I mean, just visually, that film on Netflix, it is Mascots, is so great because it's basically the same structure of Best in Show, but whereas you don't have the dogs, you have all these men and women in really, really silly costumes, doing things that people of that age should not be doing. So I think that the wardrobe is, you know, in the Chris Guest stuff is always fun, always fun. In Family Tree, for example, that series I did there, I had my hobby I created was spelunking, which is cave, exploring caves. But I chose it because I just liked the word, and I wanted to say spelunking in the script.
I like it.
And then that outfit for that, of course, is nuts, because you have the big helmet with the pith thing and the light at the front, and it's lunacy. So I mean, those are always fun to do, always fun.
And when you're doing the writing for these shows, are you conscious when you're writing them that there might have to be stuff that's cleared with wardrobe department in terms of copyright and licensing?
Not really. No, because I don't think I've done anything where that would need to be cleared. No, I don't think so. I mean, interestingly, one movie I created, I wrote the story for and created entirely, was Tooth Fairy with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. And oddly, that was one of the very few movies where I saw the poster before I saw the script. I knew that it needed a big, macho, well-known actor, and I had like The Rock in mind. I had Vince Vaughn. I had, someone like that, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, somebody who'd never in a fairy costume with wings, a tutu and wings. And so it was literally the costume came before the script.
Right, interesting.
I could see the poster, and that's what the poster ended up being. The Rock with a pair of wings, and it's slightly different in the end because we didn't do the tutu, but yeah.
What was interesting, and you touched upon it briefly with Eugene Levy, was how the people that you imagine that would be nice in real life are nice in real life. So like when you worked with Tom Hanks, for example, and there might be someone that's reading it going, is there any dirt on Tom Hanks? And of course there's no dirt on Tom Hanks because he's Tom Hanks. And then the Dustin
I've tried to find it, but I couldn't.
It's not out there, I'm convinced. And also Dustin Hoffman, when you met Dustin Hoffman, that must have been quite a nice moment for you after seeing the speech that he gave for Kramer versus Kramer. You mentioned that, and I want to quote the speech here, but I think it'd be best if people read the book, because it's a nice paragraph, and it had such nice candor in it. But you meeting Dustin Hoffman and having that follow up must have been a nice moment for you.
Yeah, it was a really strange. I mean, it was. I had to pinch myself that all that had happened in the space of about 3 or 4 years. That I was nowhere, and my career was nowhere, and then suddenly I was getting a standing ovation for an award in New York, or doing a Broadway show, and the standing ovation was led by Dustin Hoffman, who I'd come to know quite well. And it was amazing.
Was that for the? I don't know if I'm fast tracking here. Was that for the review show?
It was for the Noises Off. I was in Noises Off, the original show. And Dustin was doing Death of a Salesman, but that my girlfriend at the time was also in that production. So I got to know him very well. Right. And actually, there's a wardrobe malfunction story there. Dustin, the Tony Awards are happening that year. And we got a few and they got a few. But Dustin decided to have a party at the Players Club in New York and invited us, me and some other people. And I decided to go, and it was right after the last show of the week on the Sunday. The awards were in the evening, and we'd done the Sunday matinee. And I had in Noises Off, I deliberately chosen a tuxedo, a dinner jacket that was too short, because it was just an ill-fitting thing, because I had to put it on at short notice, in the show, and it was way too short and comic in that sense. And I thought we had to wear tuxedos to the Players Club for this awards thing. And I thought, well, I'm not going to rent one or buy one. I'm just going to wear this costume. So I had a shower after the show, and then put the costume on and thought, yeah, great, I'll just wear this and then bring it back on Tuesday when we start the show again for the next week. And I went to go out the stage door, and it was locked. And I was looking around, and I realized the guy who lets you in and out wasn't there. And then I walked around, and I realized the entire theater was empty and completely locked. And I was stuck there for potentially 48 hours inside a locked theater. And I panicked. I didn't know what to do. And by the way, this is before mobile phones. So I went into the lobby, and through the glass doors of the lobby, I was hammering on the doors. And people were walking, this is New York, people were walking down the street just looking and going, oh yeah, another lunatic stuck inside a theater or whatever, and did nothing. And so I finally had to go to the payphone, and I called, it's 911 in America, it's 999. I called the emergency services, and the fire department came out, and they told me to stand on the stage, and that there's safety curtains there and a single light bulb. So I stood there, And I waited and waited, and I heard this smash. And I looked up into one of the balconies right at the top of the theater. And at the back, there was a curtain and a window there. And I saw an axe coming through. And then this fireman coming through the window, he opened it and calls down and says, "You okay down there?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." "Okay, come on." And I walked up there, and I had to be kind of carried out the window and lowered down a fire ladder on this fire engine onto 57th Street, I think it was, next to 8th Avenue. And in this tuxedo that was at this point up to my knees and down to my elbows, and probably my arse hanging out of it as well. And I was carried down this ladder to a crowd of onlookers applauding and cheering, and a bunch of press. And the next day, amidst all the stories of who won the Tonys, there was a picture and a gossip column story about this Broadway actor who got locked in his own theatre. And a picture of my arse hanging out of a tuxedo.
When I read that, I did imagine Roger Moore and Tanya Roberts, you being Tanya Roberts in this example from A View to a Kill, when he's escaping City Hall and the onlookers are there and a guy's drinking. The fireman just drops down a ladder or two. No, Bond does, doesn't he? Bond's on the ladder and he drops, and the guy drops his drink. It's
great.
From my favorite View to a Kill. But I was imagining the John Barry score as that fireman was lowering you down the ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. So the book, Jim, you said it took about 5 months to get together. Was it quite hard to kind of concisely, leave chapters on the floor, as it were? Was there stuff that you think, well, I can probably make another book out of this?
Well, I definitely think, if I wanted to, or there was any kind of demand for it, and who knows, I've got enough material to write another book. But I became very ruthless about certain things, and people helped. They say there was one person who very kindly read it and said, "I actually love it, but there's one chapter that jumped out as being out of place," and he was dead right. He was absolutely right, and it's for another book. So it had a different tone, and he was right. And there were some stories I cut out and some things I added late on, much to the publisher's annoyance. I kept saying, "Oh, I've got one more thing I want to stick in," and that I'd like to take out. But yeah, there were some stories that I name names, as you know, and that I don't shy away from naming and shaming and naming names throughout, except on very rare occasions. There was one studio executive I had a terrible experience with who was a drug addict, and I didn't feel it was fair to do that because it was a long time ago, and I knew he'd been into rehab. And to be honest with you, I don't know if he's dead or clean and sober, or he's, got another life entirely. Yeah. But I felt that was not fair game. And there was a celebrity story of a celebrity who came to my house and behaved really, really appallingly, got very drunk and did some stuff and said some stuff. And I got my kind of revenge at the time in terms of putting them in their place. But I remembered also I can't say it's she wrote an incredibly nice letter about a day later, apologizing profusely. And I thought, well, that's not fair. That's not fair. I can't, that's not fair game. If someone holds their hand up and is big enough to do that, that's not fair. And it just then becomes a gossipy story. Yeah. And it's someone who I admire immensely as a performer and actor, and very well-known actress. So yeah, there were things that I took out that I felt weren't in keeping with the integrity and the honesty that I wanted.
Which I think comes across. That moment also had some nice deference to it. So you do notice that there are some things that you are willing to name, like the Facebook status that kind of has the listicle of this person is a and 4 asterisks. Yeah, 4 asterisks. It's a great game, as it were.
It is, yes. You've already eliminated one of the names, so no more spoiler alerts.
Sure.
But yeah, no, what's interesting about that was that out of those 9 who I say, there's 10 A-listers I worked with, 9 were lovely, 1 was an absolute 4 asterisks. And I explain why the 9 were lovely. And some people I totally rehabilitate, because there's a lot of candidates in that 9 who could be, because they have terrible reputations. And I say my experience, they were lovely. They were great. So, and then the person who is the 4 asterisk really gets it. Lock, stock and barrel.
And just on that, I won't give the name away, but let's let's just say that in the time there wasn't the social media, like when this was happening, and there wasn't some, I guess, backlash. I think nowadays, if someone is maybe a dickhead on set, it's very quickly discovered. Maybe someone's even recording it on set, and it's instantly out there. In your experience, do you think that people are kind of a little bit nicer now because they know that stories could come out at a lot quicker pace?
I think it's double-edged sword. I think people are more guarded. You know, that's what people are more isolated, and we're isolated enough as it is with the pandemics and, you know, the sort of divisions within our society politically. So I think, yes, I mean, bad behavior is less tolerated, certainly in terms of sexual bad behavior or disrespectful behavior, but it's also abused, you know, in terms of people have a legitimate kind of disagreement. And then I've heard a story just yesterday of someone, an actor and an actress, they had a disagreement about something, and the actress went to H&R department and wanted them fired because they said they were physically threatening them. And it's just absolutely 100%. This is the sweetest, kindest, and most non-violent person you can imagine. He just happens to be 6'6". So it's like, he can't help his height. Right, and she was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare, this person. And he luckily the producers and the people who ran the show knew that he was the good guy and she wasn't. So they just, you know, ignored it. But that's dangerous territory. That's dangerous territory. And we've seen people lose their jobs and their statuses through false claims. And so I think, you know, it's legit, and there are a lot of people that need to be believed. But I touch on it a little bit actually in the book. I skirt around it, but I think that it is in some ways better, but there's still bad behavior, and I think you have to deal with it not in a confrontative way. I mean, I'm now the old lag on set, so I've earned the right to take people quietly aside and say, look, it's actually better if you don't do this. Right. And younger people are very responsive. They're like, thanks very much, and I appreciate you not dressing me down in public or doing, you know, being unpleasant about it. Older people, less so. Older hacks who are told by me that's not great. Do not particularly like it, but I don't care.
Right. Well, I mean, we're talking about 4 decades worth of you being in the business.
44 years I've been, 44 years. Yeah.
And so, I mean, you did remarkably well to cram that into 300 pages. It has that kind of hit and run element where you talk about someone over here, maybe having a drink in the bar, things kind of escalate, and then the next day you meet them in the lift and then go, well, that was a nice time, and never see them again. And it has that kind of almost like you have that moment, and that feels like what the book is. It's kind of a celebration of a lot of moments, but not of themselves, if that makes sense. Jim, I appreciate that you've probably got a 5-minute break now between.
I've got a 2-minute break.
2-minute break
between my next.
I'm really sorry, Jim.
Not to worry, it's my fault. I tend, once I get going, it's hard. I'm like a wind-up toy. I can't.
Jim squeezed me into a couple of interviews here, so I'll let you have your 2-minute break. Caught with My Pants Down is the book out now. Jim, where's the best place people can buy that?
Well, the most easiest place for anyone to buy books these days is Amazon. So I can always find it there. If you do buy it there, if you buy it anywhere, any bookstore, online or elsewhere, please rate and review it on Amazon, because that helps. And I say that not for me, because I'm so selfless. All the profits from this, my profits, are going to 3 charities, including one for Ukrainian refugees. So the more people who rate it and like it genuinely and write nice things, the more Amazon will promote it, the more people will buy it, and the more money will go to these 3 charities that are all very close to my heart. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jim. And hanging out on Instagram at Jim Piddock. We'll leave all the show notes over on the blog. But Jim, thanks so much for your time. Congrats again. Great book.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you.